J.D. Vance, a Yale Law School graduate, and Tim Walls, a high school teacher. Make sure you put KBLA in your schedule and plan to watch it right here. We'll have it live, and again, some live discussion coming up following that debate. So again, that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. And tomorrow we'll have on some debate experts. So we'll be bringing you coverage throughout the day. Various shows will be reporting on the debate and bringing you some expert analysis on ways that you should watch the debate, questions that you should be asking, information you should be looking for. We are so close to this election, so this VP debate in many ways, I think, takes on more significance than it otherwise would. So again, the vice presidential candidates debate tomorrow, Tuesday, October 1st. But before I bring on Dr. Fauntleroy and Alan Orr, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. Now, yesterday, Sunday, Donald Trump doubled down on his rhetoric, saying that crooked Joe Biden became mentally impaired. And then he said sad to that, whatever that means. But then he went on to say, but lying Kamala Harris, honestly, I believe she was born that way. Minutes later, he called VP Harris, who has an undergraduate degree from Howard and a law degree from Hastings, he called her a stupid person. And his crowd ate it up, as they usually do. They started chanting, lock her up. How ironic, lock her up. Now, there's been some backlash, very swift backlash from the disability rights community, because we do not, and I'm a member of the disability rights community, don't take kindly to Trump making fun of people who happen to have mental impairments. It is a reality in our country. There are millions of people who do have mental impairments. Obviously, Joe Biden is not one of them. Obviously, Kamala Harris is not one of them. And obviously, Kamala Harris was not born with any mental impairment. She is extremely intelligent. I don't know what her IQ is, but I have to venture to say it's pretty high. She has demonstrated an ability to graduate from two of the nation's top universities, to go on to accomplish things in her professional career that, to date, not a single solitary female on this planet that lives in the United States can say they've ever done, because we've never had a female vice president ever. So she holds so many firsts in her career. So clearly the woman is not stupid. But I think it's the response to what Donald Trump said that's most troubling to me. There were people like former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who's a Republican, who said on CBS News that these comments were insulting, not only to the vice president, but to the people that actually do have mental disabilities. Thank you, Larry Hogan, for calling that out. Others, though, other Republicans, all they would say is, we wish Donald Trump would stay focused on the issues. Okay, well, you can keep wishing that. Clearly, that's not what he's going to do. But no other folk, other than Larry Hogan, in terms of a public statement on the Republican side, made a full-throated statement just calling out Donald Trump for this kind of conduct. And it's just appalling that we live in a time where a candidate running to be the president of the United States can make those kinds of baseless personal attacks on his opponent, and the party that he's running to lead says and does nothing but double down and cheer and laugh and clap and encourage him to continue, as if that is the kind of juvenile conduct and behavior that we want representing us on the global stage. Do we really want a high school student representing the interests of one of the most powerful nations, or the most powerful nation in the world? If Donald Trump's vocabulary is so limited, and we now know that it is, that he cannot talk about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, for that fact, without using using single syllable words to insult them. I mean, the way this party just supports him no matter what he does is so just hypocritical, disappointing, and as his word, sad, one of those monosyllable words, sad. And then there's this poll out that voters are saying that it is folks in the media who are responsible for the attacks on Donald Trump's life. Now, they ignore all of the rhetoric that Donald Trump uses and want to place the blame on anchors and media pundits and experts, nobody's willing to, I shouldn't say want to, but nobody seemingly is willing to hold this guy accountable. We are less than 40 days out from one of the most important elections of our time. I hope people are watching. I hope they are listening. This is not the kind of person you would want teaching a student's body at a high school, at an elementary school. This isn't conduct that you would tell your children to follow. This isn't conduct that you would hold up as an example of an intelligent, educated professional that is ready to run a lemonade stand, less known, run the United States of America. So thank you, Donald Trump, for continuing to show us who you are. Independent voters, voters in swing states, we are watching, we are making notes, and we are going to act accordingly, even if the Republican Party refuses to hold you accountable. We will do what they seemingly have an inability to do. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
What's that sound? That's the sound of Downy Unstoppable scent beads going into your washing machine and giving your clothes freshness that lasts all day long. There it is again. It's like music to your ears, or more like music to your nose. That freshness is irresistible. Let's get a Downy Unstoppables bottle shake. And now a sniff solo. Nice. With Downy Unstoppables, you just toss, wash, wow, for all-day freshness.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Michael Fontroy and Alan Orr are joining me in this hour. And in hour two, we're going to be talking to an author. His name is Mike Africa. He's written the definitive book on the bombing of the MOVE. MOVE was a revolutionary Black civil liberties group in Philadelphia that was bombed by law enforcement in 1985, killing 11 civilians. Mike grew up in this movement and is now written a book about the movement and the bombing. And he's going to be here in the hour 2 to talk about his new book. All right, Professor Fontroy, every time Donald Trump does this, he knows that it's going to get him the news cycle. And he purposely does this. And yet again, he gets the news cycle. So here we are in this perpetual cycle of chasing Donald Trump's most outlandish statements. And this time he didn't just offend Black people, he offended disabled people, calling Kamala Harris and Joe Biden mentally impaired, and then having his crowd at his rally start clapping and cheering and shouting, "Lock her up." And Republicans say, I just wish he'd stick to the issues.
It is as predictable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. We've seen this a million times over the last 9 or so years. So, I'm as weary of it as you are and so many other people. I can't stop shaking my head at the weakness of Republicans who are willing to accept any kind of disrespectful, unprofessional, unpresidential behavior just so they can pick the judges. And it says a whole lot to me about the degradation of our politics, the degradation of our society writ large, when you see a number of people who, in many ways, have no grounds on which to criticize Kamala Harris's intellect. And so, but yet here they are, including the president, by the way, former president. And so here they are, embarrassing themselves and the rest of the country. In your monologue, you talked about, you essentially raised this question: is this the best that America has to offer? Right? If Donald Trump is the best that America has to offer, then where are we really as a country? And so that's my concern. I worried significantly about that. And because I am increasingly cynical about our politics, and I'm looking at these polls showing the race is way too close than it should be, right? I wonder if, there's a majority or near majority of people who accept almost all of what he has to say.
And I wonder, Alan, the white male privilege piece of this, because that's exactly what we are witnessing. It's almost, it's hard to imagine someone experiencing the privilege that this man does. So no one would tell their children, grow up to be like Donald Trump. I mean, maybe you would say be wealthy, be a real estate developer, but you would not typically raise a child to call people names. That's bullying. That's what we teach our kids not to do. But yet this 70 million, 60 million people have accepted that is perfectly okay for him. Now, others have tried it, and very quickly they don't get away with it. So how do we get to a point where Republicans, or will we ever get to a point where Republicans are willing to call out Donald Trump and stop just saying, oh, that's Donald Trump being Donald Trump?
Well, I think some Republicans have made that move, right? There are the flakes, the former people who are now sort of anti-Trump Republicans who are sort of said this is a bridge too far, they'll ruin the party. I think you've actually seen, people who are still Republicans try to taper it down because he does have that leeway to do these things that are outrageous and say things and lie in public. And I don't know why people don't step out against him. And that's part of the reason why there's a decline within the Republican Party. So regardless of what everybody's saying about these things, we know that only 33% of Americans, 33% of the Trumpians ever going to exist. So he has to pull someone over, and he's not doing that with these outrageous acts.
Yeah, something I heard Mitt Romney say, which I thought was interesting. They've been courting Mitt Romney to do an endorsement of Kamala Harris in the way that we've seen other Republicans that clearly don't support Donald Trump do. And he said that he's not going to, because he wants to have credibility as a Republican when Trump loses, to start to be one of those people to help be one of those people to rebuild the party. And he thought he would lose cred with his Republican friends if he, endorsed a Democratic candidate. What do you make of that, Professor, that Mitt Romney is thinking past Trump?
Right. He is among a number of people who are thinking past Trump. I heard his comments, read his comments rather, and just don't accept them. I think he's using that as a reason to not endorse, because he's concerned about other things. And in that same package, in that same piece that I read on it, he also talked about concern about his family's safety and all that kind of stuff.
He did
And,
say that.
and so I don't. So I, he may say it's about having credibility within the Republican Party, but the Republican Party that he was the nominee of, and the Republican Party that the Cheney family and so many other sort of old school Republicans have led for years, that party is gone and is never coming back. So while there may be a rebuilt Republican Party, it is not going to reflect the values that we saw in previous decades. And look, we could disagree about public policy, certainly during the Reagan years. There's a whole bunch to jump up and down about in retrospect, as it was at that time. But those days are gone. And so I don't know what he's talking about when he says rebuild the party, because the rebuilding of the party is going to be done by younger people who have much higher ceilings and much more runway in front of them, not folks who are toward the end of their career.
Yeah, and one of the things, Alan, that Donald Trump is doing as we get so close to the November election date, not only is he making these personal attacks against Kamala Harris, he literally is telling lies about things she said. So we know she went to the border on Friday and she talked about fentanyl and the scourge on our country from the importing of fentanyl, bringing fentanyl into the U.S. She talked about making it a top priority to disrupt the flow of fentanyl coming into the country. Donald Trump, in that speech on Sunday, turned around and lied on Kamala Harris and said that she wants to legalize fentanyl. This is this 109-minute speech that he gave, and this is the second straight day that he amplified the false claim that Kamala Harris wanted to legalize fentanyl. He said it Saturday and he said it again on Sunday. We've heard him take other statements that she makes and then completely lies about them. Like she wants kids to go to school and come home, having had a gender, surgery, transition surgery. How dangerous is this?
It's very dangerous. It's where we are in the media. That's why there will be no fact checking of the debate tomorrow night by CBS with regards to the vice presidents. There is no standard of reality, no level. And so I think the Republican Party is in a very precarious situation where it may become a very small party, and you might see the Democratic Party sort of divide a little bit because it's such a big tent. So it won't be the New Baptist Church or the Greater New Baptist Church. It's going to be a whole new type of religion that they're going to have to come up with, because part of the stamp that Trump has given, and specifically if he loses and there's all this litigation that shows just how far down the road he went and how many Republicans followed him down that road, there will be no recovery from that.
Yeah, we know that there's litigation already taking place and plans for massive litigation to occur after this election if Donald Trump doesn't get the outcome that he desires. We have to watch that very closely. Alan, I didn't ask you at the beginning of the show, are you okay? Because you're in Tennessee.
Sure. So my family is in Valdosta, which is one of the hot spots where everybody is actually where Trump was today. They're not okay, meaning they're alive, but they don't have power or water for 4 days. In this part of Tennessee, we're okay. But a little bit east of me is where it sort of borders North Carolina, and all of the bridges and roads are out and people don't have power. So, considerably thinking about those people in infrastructure, right? That's why it was so important for Biden to pass that infrastructure bill, because those roads should not have given away and towns should not be flooded today, because those things are preventable.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And our hearts and prayers are obviously with those families that have lost loved ones. 104 people killed because of hurricanes. And these natural disasters, people wake up. These happen all too often, and they hit Black communities, poor communities harder than they hit other communities where you do have these crumbling roads, this failed infrastructure. So all of this is on the ballot in November. When we come forward, I want to talk about this University of Pennsylvania Law School with a lawyer and a professor. What do you make of this woman suspended but keeping her job? Does this tell us that, maybe tenure needs to be revisited, the concept of tenure? And also Kamala Harris is surging in some battleground states. And even though the polls are tight, there's a lot of enthusiasm and optimism going into this last 40 days. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
The right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Des Moines, Iowa-based trucking firm TMC is facing a racial discrimination and harassment lawsuit. A man hired as a flatbed truck driver says 2 days into his orientation, the company told him to cut his dreadlocks or lose the job. Drew Harvey says they did fire him. TMC was also sued after being accused of firing another man for having dreadlocks 3 years ago. Vice President Kamala Harris backs legalizing marijuana. She spoke on the issue for the first time as the Democratic presidential nominee on the podcast All the Smoke. She said, quote, "I just feel strongly people should not be going to jail for smoking weed," end quote. Harris has been criticized for prosecuting marijuana-related crimes as California's attorney general, but said on the podcast that supporting its legalization is not a new position for her. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Over in Long Beach, a motorcycle-involved accident has been moved to the right shoulder, while stop traffic from Pico Avenue continues on the 710 North connectors of the 405. Watch for heavy traffic in Mid-City as the stall continues to block the left lane of the 10 East before Normandy Avenue. Slight delay runs heavy from Arlington. Multi-vehicle accident in North Hollywood remains in the carpool and left lanes, still waiting on tow on the 170 North and Magnolia Boulevard. And heavy traffic continues from the 101-134 freeway. In Costa Mesa, watch for a slight delay running heavy on the 55 North between the 405 and Anninger Avenue. Also, drive remains slow from Chapman to the 91.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. At Blindster, we offer custom-made faux wood and real wood blinds and shutters, cellular shades, Roman shades, bamboo shades, exterior shades, and more, all at factory direct prices. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When Magic Johnson became a part owner of the NFL Washington Commanders last summer, he said it was the biggest achievement in his business career. A year later, Magic is connected to the hottest story in the NFL. Folks around the country are talking about the resurging Commanders franchise and their talented rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels. Magic's team is 3-1 for the first time since 2011. Barack Obama was in his first term as president. The Commanders were 4-13 last season and finished the season 1-10. Here's an indication of how much Magic's team has improved. In the last 2 games, the Commanders have scored on every possession except kneel downs. Daniels has completed 85% of his passes in the last 2 games. The NFL has a long list of great quarterbacks, but none of them have an 85% completion rate in back-to-back games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're invited to join KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress for a vice presidential debate watch party featuring Governor Tim Walz versus Senator J.D. Vance, Tuesday, October 1st at 6 p.m., immediately following the debate. Broadcast live here on KBLA Talk 1580. There will be a live panel discussion. Refreshments will be served and seating is limited. So RSVP right away at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV. Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. SMP volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an SMP open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit ca-smp-volunteer.org. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself, because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Mommy, want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
We're back, and Dr. Michael Fontroy and Alan Orr are joining me in this hour. And in hour 2, Mike Africa Jr., an author of an important book on the bombing by law enforcement of the MOVE, Revolutionary Black Civil Liberties Group in Philadelphia that happened in 1985. Michael grew up in this organization and has been given the responsibility or the task of repairing what was left of his family. So make sure you stick around for hour 2 to hear about this really fascinating story from someone who has a firsthand account of what happened. Also, tomorrow, the VP debates, VP candidates, Tim Walz and JD Vance are going to face off on CBS. And as Alan Orr told us, don't expect a lot of fact checking to take place, but you can expect JD Vance to do what his boss does, his boss meaning Donald Trump, which is tell a lot of lies. Professor Fontroy, Kamala Harris over the weekend was taunting Donald Trump about a debate, wanting a second debate, basically, saying he's running scared. He has refused a second debate, but I don't know if a second debate would be helpful given how they just turn into opportunities for Donald Trump and now JD Vance tomorrow night to just tell lie after lie after lie. And without in real-time fact checking, a lot of what JD Vance is likely to say, including that Haitians are eating people's pets in that town in Ohio. Do you think this helps or hurts either side going into the election in November?
Well, with regard to Vice President Harris's challenge and taunt of former President Trump, I'm really conflicted about this because there's a part of me that thinks there's no real reason to do it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The other side of that, though, is they must think they can bait him into saying even worse things. And they must think that those things are enough to turn off voters to him. But as you see with the polls, he has a certain permanence that's just immovable. So I'm not really sure where that lands. As it pertains to tomorrow's debate, historically, most vice presidential debates are as forgettable as most of the presidential debates, quite honestly. And so other than Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle, can you think of anything that you heard that was memorable? And that line didn't even have much to do with public policy. So I don't expect very much. I think you're right. Senator Vance is just going to turn on the fire hose of lies and hope that he can douse everybody so much about it that they don't realize the full range of the lies that he's telling. So I'm not very optimistic that we're going to get much that's useful. And the only way it makes news is if somebody says something extraordinarily outlandish.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Alan. I can't even remember Pence and Harris debate, and they debated, and I can imagine that Harris won, given that I'm sure she's more skilled than Mike Pence. But these debates, particularly when you get to the VP candidate, just don't seem to mean a lot in terms of how people are going to vote.
Well, you remember the fly, though, right? That's what one of the big things that the fly sort of landed on Mike Pence's head. And I'll tell you something I learned in law school. You don't want to mess with people who are cups of crazy, because if you get crazy on you, it's hard to get off. So you don't want to debate people who are crazy. You don't want to be involved with people who are not going to be legitimate either in the courtroom or in real life, because when they make up stories, you're going to spend so much time fact checking and defending them that it's going to put you down at a hindrance. That's why it's so important for Trump right now in all of his appearances to come out with some bold lie to say, yeah, Trump said it, so therefore it's true because he's a reliable source. That is this whole sort of way to get attention in the newspaper. And then, as we all know, the correction never gets the same headline as what they said in the first place. So it's all strategy for him. So no, I would not debate him again. I don't think there'll be much out of the vice president's debate. What I really think that Tim Walsh really focused on is how inexperienced JD Vance is. He's been a senator for less than 2 years. He has literally no political lifestyle. Basically, he made himself a lot of money, and I'm all happy for him. Congratulations. Welcome to the American dream. But outside of that, he's not qualified to run a country, and he's proven that by his statements and misstatements about his own state of Ohio.
Yeah, no, clearly he has very limited experience and cannot claim to be ready on the first day to do anything. He doesn't have any executive experience either as an employer. I don't know. I mean, he made a lot of money, but he didn't build a company from scratch or even do some of those things that Donald Trump said made him qualified, even though we know he lied about most of his background. You know, Mitt Romney was a businessman. So there are a lot of examples of people who have legitimately built companies, hired people, managed people, and maybe those are transferable skills. JD Vance doesn't seem to have any of those transferable skills. His one skill seems to be playing to Donald Trump. And we know that whenever anyone is on the stage and they have to answer to Donald Trump, they're really just performing for an audience of one. He's not even performing for independent voters or potential voters in swing states. He's just got to go up there and be the guy that Donald Trump, can pat on the head and say, son, you did a good job. And we know that includes being a fierce attacker, telling repeated lies about Haitians eating pets and Kamala Harris wanting to legalize fentanyl. So I think tomorrow is going to be a waste of pretty much everybody's time and energy. But let's talk about this law school professor. Help us understand the concept of tenure, Professor Pomeroy, because here's this woman. They're going to give her a 1-year suspension at half pay and some other sanctions with a public reprimand. But, that's it. She can still give speeches. She just has to say, I'm giving this speech in my personal capacity rather than, as a university member. And she can go back to teaching after this 1-year suspension. So is tenure like Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court? Do whatever the hell you want to do, and nobody really gets to challenge it.
So tenure is a double-edged sword because it's created to help give scholars the opportunity to challenge norms and tell the truth as they see it. The problem, of course, is that in some cases, that truth, as in the case of Amy Wax, causes so many problems, is not provable, and creates more divisiveness than is warranted. So it's a very difficult circumstance. And then add to that the fact that there is a bit of a difference for tenure at a public institution and tenure at a private institution like the University of Pennsylvania, which is where Professor Amy Wax is. Now, let me just tell you, as somebody who has tenure, I can tell you, I feel a lot freer to say some things that I probably would be less willing to say if I didn't have it. So I see a benefit to it, but I also recognize that there are limits. And in the case of Professor Wax, we're talking about somebody who has a master's degree in philosophy, a JD degree, and oh, by the way, she has a medical school degree. She has an MD and was a first-year law student and is her last year in medical school. So this is a really skilled person, but she's using her skill in ways that I think can charitably be called racist and xenophobic. And she has a long history in that regard. So tenure is great if you have it, but it's not like Clarence Thomas because in some cases, tenure is under attack around the country, and tenure professors are being fired now under financial exigency. So there are limits, but she's at a place where she can really push the boundaries of that as far as possible.
So what would constitute grounds for terminating someone that has tenure? Because it seems like, she's already done something that's so egregious that in any other environment she would be facing termination.
Right.
Obviously, tenure gives her a layer of protection. So if this isn't a fireable offense, what would be?
Well, I think I don't know what the University of Pennsylvania's specific language is around that. I think that if she were at a state school, depending on the state, she would have been fired, right? So that's part of the story. I was mentioning earlier, there's some differences, there's some nuance around some of this. My guess is if it's something that happens in the classroom, right, then that could potentially be problematic. That could potentially be fireable. But if she's all running her mouth to Tucker Carlson, which is one of the instances in which she got in trouble, then perhaps that's viewed very differently at the University of Pennsylvania.
What do you make of this, Alan? You and I have been to law schools. We've had law professors that have said things that we don't agree with.
So I think rather than changing tenure the way that it works because it's good. I mean, one, the school made a bad choice. So that really speaks about the people who gave her tenure in the first place, knowing her history. So that speaks to that in that own regard. A little bit of this sitting down, right? She's supposed to be the star player, and now she has to take a year off. It's supposed to be an embarrassing moment for her professionally, right? You're pulled out of the game. You can't be in the classroom to sort of see if she will voluntarily leave. But I don't think we should change what is good for many professors for one bad pool of individuals, because the students will know who she is. And in her own way, she might have sealed her own death warrant because, who's going to come to her now? Who's going to want to take her classes, blah, blah, blah. But, in the free space, while she's dangerous, we know that it exists, right?
Yeah, I'm not in favor or advocating that we do away with the concept of tenure, because I do appreciate what you said, Professor, about the freedom that it gives professors to explore and to exercise their First Amendment rights and to do other things that perhaps would be difficult to do if they didn't have tenure. But when you hear some of the troubling statements that she's made, the 1-year suspension and making her sit out the game just doesn't seem to be sufficient to punish her for what she has done. But maybe it is. Maybe, as you said,
we're Americans. Whatever happened to Shane? Whatever happened to Shane?
So let me just add quickly to Alan's point, which I think is which I agree with and want to underline. So the students know the professors. They know who they should go to and who they shouldn't. And if there are choices with the particular class she's teaching, the students are going to take the other professor who offers that class, because there's a taint on the students too who go to her for her classes. Because then the question becomes, so wait a minute, do you see the world the way she does? And so I think for a lot of students who are trying to launch careers, this might be the kind of thing that leaves her with almost no students to teach anyway, which in some ways will get you to the same result of not teaching, because there will be nobody to teach.
Good point. And then you're messing with the university's money. So
look, Penn got plenty of money. We don't have to do a GoFundMe for Penn. Don't worry about that.
Right. They'll be fine. Those adjunct professors are given $1,000 a course. They'll be okay.
Okay, well, I'm sure there is some degree of public pressure, probably not from in this moment that we live in, where I think there's the sense of being emboldened, and people like her can make these statements without, very many consequences. But we'll continue to watch what happens to this professor. But very interesting. When we come forward, a lot of talk about Kamala Harris winning, but what will she be able to do, including getting her cabinet members confirmed if the Democrats hold on by a slim margin to the Senate, or God forbid they lose even their slim majority. What might a Harris administration face in its first 90, 120 days? Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
gear off-roading? A Chevy truck can take whatever you can throw at it, including tailgating in an actual tailgate.
I mean, homecoming is just around the corner. Oh, and showing up in a new truck.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Get things done and look good doing it.
Okay, I'm up. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Without offering me a ride? That's cold.
Head to your local Chevy dealer and get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 and Colorado pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 24.5%. Plus finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available at least in some of the offers. Taking retail delivery by 9/30/24.
If you have asthma, you know that there are certain things that can set off your asthma symptoms. These things are called triggers, and patients with severe asthma have an average of 8 triggers. It could be pollen, dust, pollution, colds, viruses, smoke, or stress. If you know your symptoms, you have already taken the first step to managing your asthma. The next step is to write your triggers down in a notebook or journal and record your symptoms when you come across those triggers. This will give your healthcare provider valuable information about what you can do to help manage your triggers. By understanding your triggers and writing them down, you are on your way to taking back control of your lung health. Visit luma-edu.com for more guidance. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We are back, and as excited as folks are about the prospect of Kamala Harris winning, there are a lot of folks looking at the reality of what she would face, including a difficult time getting her own cabinet members confirmed, because at this moment, most analysts are leaning towards Republicans capturing the Senate, given that the political map was already stacked against Democrats from the gate. The GOP is all but certain to win the West Virginia seat that's being vacated by Senator Joe Manchin, and Tester in Montana is having a very, very difficult time. If those 2 seats alone were to be lost by the Democrats, that would be enough to knock Democrats out of their 51-49 majority and alter the governing landscape if we cannot secure an upset win elsewhere. Now, Democratic incumbents in battleground states like Sherrod Brown in Ohio and Jackie Rosen in Nevada, fortunately, at this moment, appear to be running ahead of their Republican opponents. But, Alan, this could be difficult because this is a GOP, if they had control of the Senate, would probably make it very, very difficult for Kamala Harris to even get her team in place.
Right. So that's the message that we need to tell, right? If you're voting for Harris, you need to be voting all the way down ticket in places where it really matters. I think this concept, the House is a clear hole for me based on just some of the redistricting that happened in Louisiana and New York getting it right this time because they sort of messed it up last time. So that's a solid thing. With the Senate, I think people really should explore about these national races. When things are statewide, Democrats generally do well. And in places like Florida, here in Tennessee, where Marsha Blackburn hasn't really had a strong history, in Texas, where Ted Cruz, and while those are long shots in the history of these elected sort of positions, it's sort of different in this new movement where there's a mobilization of women within this concern about who's running for office. So I'm not going to give up. I mean, I don't think that we'll get 60 people in the Senate, but I do think we can get 51 people in the Senate if people just decide to vote and they vote down ballot in the places where it really matters.
Well, we know, Professor Fauntleroy, that historically presidents, whether you're Dem or Republican, come into office with long enough coattails that they have helped their party win the Senate and Congress. I think I saw that it hasn't been since Grover Cleveland in 1884 that a Democrat was elected to a term with the Republican Senate. I don't know if I'm as confident as Alan is that we're going to pull it out for the Senate. I think the House races, yes. I feel very confident that we can pull out a majority in the House. Akeem Jeffries can make history and become the first African-American speaker, but this Senate is looking tough.
It is, and I would add some of the potential Republican pickups that they thought they could get are not going to materialize. Tammy Baldwin is safe in Wisconsin. It looks like Angela Also Brooks will get through on the other side in Maryland. And so the Republicans, they appear to be poised in the only states that they could flip at this point. And so we'll see where it lands. However, to Alan's point, and I'm somewhere between both of you on this, I'm cautiously optimistic that something could break in Texas or Florida. And if it breaks in both states, then that means the Democrats are going to end up with 53, 54 seats in the Senate, which I would I'm not expecting that kind of thing. But the races in Florida and in Texas are closer than they should be given the incumbency advantage. Ted Cruz is only a couple points up on Colin Elrod, as I recall. Yep. And Senator Rick Scott, who is not getting any help at all from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, is struggling in a race that he should be running away with when you match that up against where Trump is in the presidential election in Florida.
Do we know why the Republicans are not helping Scott?
The reporting I've read is McConnell is trying to get some get back on Rick Scott and Ted Cruz. Neither one of them are getting a lot of help from the Senate Majority PAC and some of the things that McConnell has control over. Now, look,
watch out because they ain't got no money. I'll say it. There are poor people here. Watch your money. They don't have no money.
Well, that's always an issue. But they can find money to give to West Virginia and Montana. They draw the line at Florida and Texas, and I think that's because it's personal. Now, I think in the long run, though, to your earlier point about if Vice President Harris wins in November, the difficulty she might have in getting her cabinet put in place, I think there's still going to be a handful of Republicans who understand that it's not in anybody's interest to hold this thing up forever. They may make some fusses and may try to make some noise in hearings, but when it comes down to it, can they really justify voting against the president-elect's nominee just because? I know they're petty enough to do it, but when you get
are we talking about the same party?
No, I know that. Listen, I know they're petty enough to do it, but I gotta believe that there are 2 or 3 Republicans are going to stand up and say, you know what, the elections have consequences. Let's get on with the business of the country, and we fight until 2022.
Well, I think that has a lot to do, Alan, with where Donald Trump is going to be, because Donald Trump is going to be somewhere licking his wounds. And I don't think Donald Trump goes away. Now, folks are saying, God.
He said he's going away. He said he won't be able with the felonies, but he said he was going to other countries, right? I mean, he said he's going to leave, and I will help them. Call my office. You tell me we can find some place for you to go. So I think Republicans, if they lose this time, specifically if they lose in the Senate by what I think they're going to lose in the Senate by, it's going to be earth-shattering. And what I ask people to consider is the demographics of the electorate have changed. People have died because of COVID and other mishandlings of different things. The whole issue with regards to women healthcare and women's rights has really changed the demographics of the ballot. Women dying is a story that's sort of a big footprint. So younger women aren't having any of that, no matter, and the focus for me, I will tell you, it really hinges on white voters. We spend so much time talking about Latina voters and Black voters. No one ever talks about the white voters who have voted for Trump consistently in every time that he went there, specifically white men. And that's really the breakthrough. Are those white men going to say, in this country, that guy does not represent me? The way he talks about people, the way he ruins his businesses, his stock is in the barrel. They keep talking about inflation, yet they're selling $100 watches. I mean, $100,000.
$1,000.
So all of that stuff isn't consistent. And I just think the people around him have to be smarter, although they're looking for the tax cuts and what have you. I honestly believe, and this is sad for me to say, I think they want him to lose because I think they want their party back.
Yeah, there are days, Alan, when I feel that. I feel like there are enough Republicans who want to see some sanity. They want to win. Trump is a loser, and he doesn't have any coattails, and he hasn't helped them win anything. And I know there are Republicans that want to get back to winning. So let's hope your prediction is right. I'm going to end this conversation on that high note, that note of optimism, that there are enough people out here who recognize that Trump is bad for the party, the Republican Party, that is, that he's bad for the country. And they may not be willing to tell that to a poster. They may not put a sign out in their yard, but quietly they'll go into the ballot box and, and they'll vote for Kamala Harris. So they'll drop that ballot in the mail, voting for Kamala Harris. That's the thought we're going to hold today. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Professor Farroy. Always a pleasure being in conversation with both of you. We're going to be talking to Mike Africa Jr. when we come forward about that devastating attack on Black civilians in Philadelphia in 1985. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.